guys, this is Prem Rana. Welcome back to my channel Rana Gaming and Technologies. Today we are going to configure Azure Firewall and we'll try to create rules. Then we will try to access a VM behind the firewall, Azure Firewall, using the RDP. So this is how we are going to configure the Azure Firewall. So you will see we will create a VM inside the VNet EUS, and we will create a subnet, and we will create a firewall. Then we will create a firewall network and firewall subnet. Then between the firewall network and the VM network, we will create a peering so that they communicate. Then we will create root table and routes so that the VM network is able to see the firewall network. And then we will access the firewall from public IP, which is allowed on the net rules in firewall. So guys, let's begin. So first we will see what we have already. So I already have a resource group where I have created these VMs and VNets already. So let's see. So I have already created a virtual machine. This is the virtual machine we are going to use for this purpose. I'm already logged in to this machine, so you can see IP address of this VM is, so I have already created the network for this. And if you want to see how we can create a virtual machine and how we can create the virtual networks, how we create the virtual subnets, so you need to check my prior videos. I have already created the videos and I will paste the link of those videos in this video details. So we already have a VM running. Also, we have virtual network created for East US. So you can see this virtual network we have already created, and we already have a subnet in here. Now, what we are going to do, as per the design, we will create a virtual network for firewall, although we already have it, but we will create it from the scratch. So let's create a virtual network and let's see. So to create a virtual network for firewall, we just go to the same virtual network and we create a new virtual network. We select the existing test lab group, and then I will create a virtual network with the name VNet Firewall. So let's create it, VNet. We name it as VNet Firewall. We want to create it in the same region. So the VM, so it will be in US East. Then next, we will provide some IP address. So I here at the network I have available is address of space is available with me is 10.2.00.16. So we will create a virtual network rather than 10.1, but we'll create 10.2.00.16. Or maybe we can try to change it. So let's see what we can get here. 10.1.0.0/16. Right. So you see that I already have a network with this, which is in the West US and it is overlapping. So we will create the network, let's say like this. Then we add a subnet and we will call it firewall subnet. Well, let's make it a bit visible. Firewall subnet. Let's make it 24 bit. So 10.2.0.0/24. This will be the subnet of the VM network we created here. And here are services. So we are not selecting any services for now. Just add the subnet. Okay, so I think I need to recreate it because I misspelled it. So firewall subnet and 10.2.0.0/24. Okay, very good. You can also have some 26 or 28 bit subnet as well, so that there are less IP addresses for the firewall. But I am taking 24 complete subnet. Okay, so next we go to the security. We keep the security same, no changes in the tag as well, and we review. So it says validation failed. So it says information is missing. So we go back and we added the subnet, but maybe we not completely add that. So whenever there is a missing part, the validation is always failed. This is a good thing I always see. So firewall subnet, and here 10.2.0.0/24. It seems I forgot to add below. Okay, so I added it here. Let's review and create. So you see the validation passed. Now we create it. Okay, guys. So sorry, I was on mute and I was talking. So we have already created this part which I have selected, and now we are going to create the net rule. We are going to launch the firewall in the same network. So let's launch the firewall. So either you can go here and you can create it, but you, you can also go to the top and you can search firewall and you can click on the firewall to create it. So let's create it from here, or maybe let's create it from here so that you get new options to check. So I will click on firewalls. Let us add a firewall here, create a Azure firewall, click add. Then I will select that same resource group. Let's name this firewall. Maybe we call it my firewall, or maybe let's say my firewall, or you can call it firewall East US, because it will be in East US zone. We are not going for the availability set. Choose a network. So we already have a network for this created. So virtual network, we are going to select the firewall network. Then it will ask for the public IP address. So it cannot use a public IP address. So we have to create a new public IP address. So let's create it. So firewall hyphen East US hyphen PIP. Let's say like this, and it's okay. Yeah. Okay. So we create a firewall public IP address. This may take some time, but yes, it is giving me some error. Virtual network must have a subnet named Azure Firewall subnet. Okay. So I think we first need to create the firewall subnet with the Azure Firewall subnet, and this name requires there. You mean you cannot create a subnet with any other name. You have to specify the name Azure Firewall subnet. So let's go there and create the Azure Firewall subnet. So we have to go to the virtual networks, then we go to the firewall network, and then we go to the subnets. So Azure Firewall Subnet. So name should be Azure Firewall Subnet. So let's see if we are able to. No, we are not able to. So first we have to actually delete this subnet, and we have to rename it as a Azure Firewall Subnet. Okay, so we are now going to create with the same naming convention it has. So it will be Azure Firewall Subnet. The name should be exactly this, and rest is okay. So we create this firewall subnet. Okay, now this is created. You can see it here. Let's go back to the firewall creation again. So I will search it from the top. All services, it's firewall. So let's create a, well, it's already there. Let's create the firewall. So let's create the firewall like FW East US. Rest is same. Use an existing network. So we will select the firewall network. Then we select the, okay, so the network is there. It's fine. And subnet is there. Now we'll select the public IP. So I need to check if, okay, the public IP was not created. Let's create it. Firewall PIP. Let's say East US hyphen PIP. Okay, we'll click OK. Okay, so let's create it. So it will do a validation. Validation passed, but it's give us some warning. Let's see what that warning is. So tag is not there. Let's create it. No worries. So now it will create a firewall. It will create with Azure firewall, and then it will create a public IP for that firewall. So let's wait for this. The public IP is created. It's the Azure firewall, which is in the process of creation now. Okay, guys. So you can see now we have the firewall ready. So we go to the resource and we see, okay, our firewall is ready. Now, what we are going to do, we need to create the peering now. So we will create a VNet peering. So we will go to VNet EUS and we go to peerings, and now we create a peering. So peering link name, you can say it anything like, uh, let's say VM2 firewall, right? Peer, and traffic or remote allowed, right? Now you have to mention the name from the remote network to here. So it will create both at the same time from VM to firewall network and from firewall network to VM. So we will type it here as firewall to VM peer, right? So we'll keep it as a resource manager. Subscription we have selected, and then we can select the virtual network. So if you see that I'm creating it in VNet US, so by default it understands that this network need to include. So you have to select the firewall network here because you are creating a peering with firewall network. So you select it, as a firewall network. Now you allow the traffic, that's all, and you click add. So you see both peerings are added at the same time from the VM network to the firewall network and from the firewall network to the VM network, because you will be accessing the network either ways from both sides. So it's created now. You just have to refresh. You will see that. So this is created here from VM to firewall peer, and on the firewall network you will see the same is created in the reverse way from firewall network to peer network. So now we have done with the peering. This will allow when we try to access this VM through the firewall, the network will communicate to each other. So it's an internal network in the Microsoft. Okay, so peering helps communicating between the VNets. Now, the next step, we are going to create the route tables. So let's search for route table. It's here. Okay, so we create the route table. Okay, so we'll select the test lab as a, we'll create an ES2S and we'll create the name as route table East US. Propagate the gateway routes. Yes. We click next. I'm not adding any tags. We'll review this, running the final validation, and it passed. And then we click create to create a route table. So routes normally help communicating with the gateways and networks. So deployment is in progress. It will not take much time. It was only firewall which was taking much time, and VPN gateways took so much time. So deployment is already completed. Let's wait here. Once the deployment is completed for the route tables, you go to the resource, you go to the route tables, and then you have to create the routes. You click add routes and you add the routes, let's say VM to firewall route, right? And then we put this address space, it will be 000. Any network will be routed via the firewall. And here we will select the virtual appliance. And now next hop. So for this, you need firewall private IP. So guys, before we create the route table, we just need some IPs information that we need to keep handy. So what are those? So let's go to the VM which we created, and then let's note down the private IP address of this VM. So we go to networking. So let's copy this private IP address of the VM. So let me write it somewhere. So the VM IP private is this, and let us go to the firewall IP, the firewall which we have created. So we need the public IP address of the firewall as well. So here is the public IP address. Let's copy this. This is the public IP address. So we note down the firewall PIP is this because we need this. And we also need the public IP address of my system. So what is my IP? You can help me. So this is my public IP address. This is needed because I will be opening the ports only for my system. Okay. So now let's go and create the route table, and we will collect the details in case needed and whatever it is. So let's go to the resource group, and test lab and we have routing table here. So let's find out the routing table, SDUS, and then go to routes and let's add a route. So let's add a route, let's say root hyphen ESUS, and we will want everything to be passed through this 00, and let's select the appliance. It's a virtual appliance, and I just remember we need the private IP address of the virtual appliance as well. So we need to find out the firewall private IP address as well. So you go here, and this is the private IP address. Normally it is the first private IP address of. So firewall private IP address. So it is this. Okay, so we have all the details now. Let us go to again routing table and go to routes and create a route. Finally, we have all information. So let's say it's a route, or you can call it a default route, but I'll call it route EUS and 0.0.0.0.0/0, all the network. Then I select the virtual appliance and I take the IP address of the private IP address of the firewall. So this will add a route to the firewall private IP address. It will take a moment to create, and here we go. Route has been created. Okay, looks like we have to reopen it to see the route. So we go to routing to, we go to the routes and we see here. Okay, so we already have a route here, right? Wait. Okay, so we are going to create a network security group, and we will create a new network security group. So we already have a subscription resource group. We'll create it in the existing. Then let's put a sub name for it. So we are creating it for vnet EUS, and let's call it NSG. Maybe we can have this NSG in the front and SG hyphen, right? So let's create it. Okay, so once this is created, we are going to associate it with the VM network. So we are putting an extra layer of security. We already allowed RDP port on VM NSG. Now we are putting an extra layer of security and we have an NSG. So now we go to subnet and we associate the VM subnet here. So we select this is the VM in East US, and we can associate this subnet with the network security group. Okay, now you have associated it with the subnet. You also have to create an inbound security rule, and that security rule will be you have to allow the RDP. So let's say source IP addresses, you can give your firewall IP address, that will be the network 10.2.0.0/24, source port any, and destination IP you can actually put the VM IP here, or maybe you can put the complete network dot 4. So these details we already have here. So if you see the VM private IP is 10.0.0.4 and firewall IP is this, so it's in the same network. So destination will be, so this is something NSG which is allowing an inbound traffic from the firewall to the through to the VM. Now we allow 3389. This is our destination port range because this is the RDP, and keep it any action allow. Let's keep the priority 80, and let's change this to RDP underscore 3389 RDP port and add this rule. So this rule will be added to the network security group so that VNet allow the inbound traffic from the firewall. Okay, so we have successfully created it. Now the final part is remaining. We go to the firewall and we create the NAT rules. So, but before that, let us try to access on RDP the private IP address, public IP address of the firewall. So this is the public IP address of the firewall. Let's try to access it over the. So we try to RDP this IP. So you see, we got an error that we cannot access it for now. So let's minimize this and let us go to the firewall now. Now we have to allow that we have to create the NAT table on the firewall. We have to create rule on the firewall so that the traffic is allowed. So we go to the firewall and we go to rule. Here you have to add the NAT rule. So let us name it RDP to VM rule, and let's say we give it a priority 100. Let's give the name RDP to VM. Let's select the protocols TCP and UDP both. Then let's select the IP address to source. So what will be the source? So source will be my local laptop. So I'm putting my public IP here. And the destination is this firewall. So I have to put the firewall public IP here. Then I have to tell the firewall or this rule which port has to allow. Translated address will be the private IP address of the VM, which is 10.0.0.4. So we edit it. Now translated port will be 3389, which is the RDP port. Now we click on add to add this rule to the firewall. Okay guys, so we can see the rule is successfully updated. So we go and refresh it. So we see the rule is there. It's the default rule we created. So you can click on here to see which rule is this. So this is RDP to VM. Okay, so now we are ready. So let me bring up the. So what we have done, this address range is actually 10.2. So don't be confused. This is the difference only. So this is 10.2.0.24. So what we have done, we have first created the East USDC VM. We created the VNet. Then we created a VM there. Then we created firewall network. We created a firewall subnet. So we call it Azure Firewall subnet, which is a specific name. Then we create the firewall. We launched the firewall. We created the firewall peering. We created the network peering between the this subnet and this subnet. Then we created the NSG on here to allow the RDP traffic from firewall network to this, right? And we tried the RDP, but it was failing because we don't create net rules on firewall. So now we have created the net rule, as you see. So we have already created this rule and we have allowed. I will reiterate again so that you understand what we did. So source IP is the IP of my laptop, public IP. You can allow any public IP. Maybe you can allow your public IP from your office. And destination address is the address of this firewall because I will be attempting to RDP on this net firewall address. The port is RDP port. This is the private IP address of the VM. So once I will destinate to the firewall IP address, this will be translated to the private IP address of the VM. And then translated port will be 3389, the same port. Okay guys, so we are ready with our setup as I described in this. So now I will try from my laptop. Earlier it was not working as I show you. The RDP was not working. So now I will try to RDP the same VM once more. So let's try to connect it. Ah, it's working now. So I will show you the login as well. We are trying to RDP to this VM and now you see we are getting a certificate and it's a VM EUS we are trying to access. Click yes. Wow. So we are able to access it. You can check it. IP config. So the VM IP address is same. And this is the design we actually prepared and now we are able to access it from a public IP which I allowed on the firewall. So if I go through my firewall, so you can see here's our firewall and we have a rule to allow this RDP from my public IP addresses. And if I delete this rule, as I already show you, when this rule was not in place, I was not able to RDP that VM. So thank you so much, guys. I will be attentive to your comments. If you have any confusion, you can just ask me, type the comments, and please subscribe to my channel. Thank you, guys, and have a nice day.